Okay, awesome. Come on, slideshow. All right. Well, good morning and welcome to Agile and Scrum Basics. This is a class that I do for the Meetup community. I've been working in Agile for about 12 years. And I came to Agile after being away from work, staying home, taking care of my kids. So it was great to transition from not working at all to working again. And I actually found some really good career growth within Agile. And I just want to share it with other women who might be on a similar journey. So if English isn't your first language, make sure you look in the bottom menu bar on Zoom, and there is a show captions button, and then you can pick whichever language you want to read the captions. If I'm speaking too fast, just drop it in the chat and I can slow down a little bit. Just wanted to share my mission statement. I really want to help women switch careers and begin a career in technology. Being in technology was very flexible for me, especially when my kids were younger. And now that my kids are in college, it's still just as flexible now that I'm changing some of my focus on how I spend my time. I primarily work from home, and I want to help other women get to some of that freedom too. I specialize specifically in the agile space, and I want to help people develop their IT skills. So I'm not a programmer, but I've done about 4 different jobs that are no code jobs. And I just want to share that with other people. Also, I want to talk briefly about the pay gap and pay equity. So basically, for every $100 a woman makes, a man is making $258. So years on years on years, you could see how that inequity adds up. And that's really because women are doing a lot of unpaid labor, including childcare, taking care of the older people in the household. They're cooking, they're cleaning, they're driving all the kids around. At the same time, they may have a job. They may only be able to work part-time because they need time to do all that running around. But I believe a tech career is a little bit more flexible because of the way that no code tech roles actually work. It's not necessarily that you need to work from 8 to 5 continuous. Instead, you can work in blocks of time, maybe take a 3-hour lunch and go run errands, pick up that kid from kindergarten or start dinner, and then you can log back in and do the rest of your work. So a few powerful paths that are going to help women really level up that career ladder. If you haven't had any exposure to technology, having exposure. So coming to classes like this one, joining other meetup groups, engaging with people who are already in tech is good. Getting career guidance. So finding a mentor or talking to the HR at your own company to see if you could find someone who could say, hey, here's a good path for how you could switch over to tech and what roles you need to take. And then finally, tech skills themselves. You do not have to go back to college. Like, don't even remove going back to college from your mind. Instead, a lot of people are getting tech skills through boot camps, webinars, research on their own. I've worked with a lot of developers where they never went to college for it. They taught themselves, they got a junior level position, and then they worked their way up from there. And then finally, it's something called digital acumen. And that's where you do a lot of practice in junior positions. And as you're in your junior position, there's going to be someone that's senior to you. So you make sure, get buddy buddy with them. Ask, can I do pair programming? Can I sit in while you work on this section of code? Honestly, I straight used to bribe people. I would have $5 Starbucks gift cards and king size Snickers. And that was when we were in the office face to face. Like, hey, which one of these do you want? So I could just sit next to you for an hour and then ask you questions for another half hour. And then I just wanted to say a little bit about myself. So this is my daughter, Sumaya. She recently graduated and she finished her freshman year in college. And then I have two sons. The short son is a college junior, and then my taller son is going to college freshman year. And then I do have hobbies. I like anime and comic book conventions. So this is me with a gang from Ghostbusters and a Ghostbusters car in the background. And then one of my favorite authors. And then I also like to cook. I kind of focus on vegan food. Even though I still eat meat, I try to eat vegan like 2 or 3 times a week. So I made a green salsa from roasted tomatillos, which are like little green tomatoes. And I also made this pita bread from scratch. So I like to cook. And then more of me cooking. And then I went to Miami a few years ago and I just love this little cafe. I ate at this cafe 4 times in like a 1 week trip. I loved it. And then I also like to dress up for Halloween. So this is me in a Sandy Cheeks costume. And yeah, it was during COVID, so I had a mask. All right, so a little bit more about me. Right, so I'll start here and then roll backwards. Right now, I'm an Agile transformation consultant, which basically means they hire me on a project and I do any of the roles below for this project. Oh, let me go back. And then I'll do any of the roles below here. So these are the roles that I recommend people look into if they do not want to do coding. And then here's a list of some of my certifications. I also teach a class that covers what these certifications are and why I needed them. So basically with tech, you don't have to go back to school, but you do always have to kind of study a little bit on the side for whatever is coming next. And generally, as long as you pick a few certifications and keep your certifications up to date, that'll be enough to keep you where you need to be. All right, so let's jump in on waterfall. So waterfall is pretty much the way that IT projects have been run in the past. So when I mean in the past, I mean like 20, 15 years ago. So basically someone was saying in the beginning, okay, we have this project. We estimate that this project is going to take 12 months. We're going to need 10 employees to do it. And we're going to build a website. The website is going to, let's just say it's like a bookstore website. You would do all of the, oh, there's a question. Yes.
I just made a comment.
Absolutely. Snickers, chocolate, and Starbucks. Best bribes ever. So back to waterfall. So they'll do all of the planning up front, and then the programmers go do all their code, all their testing, and then at 12 months, they give it to the customer. And a lot of times what ended up happening is the customer is like, okay, this is cool. But while you spent 12 months doing all this coding, we changed our colors, we changed our logo, and now we need you to go back, change the colors, change the logo. So I have, yep. So then you would have teams of devs, business analysts, and testers, and they're all in separate teams. So all the devs would do the code, maybe the BAs would help some of the testers write tests, but all of that is done separately. They're not actually talking to each other and they're not actually on the same team. They pretty much are handing the project off from team to team until it gets at the end where it's the delivery team. So specifically, you start with requirements. What does the website need to do? Then you jump into design. Okay, what the pages need to look like. Then you start coding. And when you're done, the testers take over. When the testers are done, they hand it to the team that does deployment. So deployment means that they compile all the code together and then they release it into the production environment. If you have ever heard of people saying, okay, that went live. So going live means it went into production. Then after that, you do maintenance. So maybe every 2 or 3 months, you might go to the user, send them a survey. Do you still like the website? Is it still working for you? Is there anything else you want? So this is similar to like if you go to like a 7-Eleven or a gas station and you want coffee, pretty much the coffees are just lined up, or you get whatever is in the carafe. So if all they got is decaf is your option because that's what's there. If they only have one flavor of syrup, that vanilla syrup, and then they have like a little latte machine, that's all you can get. If they only have green tea, that's all you can get. So pretty much you have to pick from what's available, and that's your coffee choice. So that would be the waterfall method. Now we're going to move into Agile. So a group of developers got together, they had some fancy conference, and they were like, you know what? This waterfall thing actually isn't working for us. We hate coding something only to find out 6 months later that things changed. We need to think of a way to make it easier for us to change our code when the customer wants to say, change a color or change a requirement or maybe even change a logo. So let's come up with a way that we can reorganize how we do work. And let's start by mixing up the teams. So you would have smaller teams that have a developer, a business analyst, and a tester. And you would take chunks of that project and give it to the different teams. And then every month or so, you would have a meeting with the customers, or we actually also call that the business. So you'd have a meeting with the business and say, of your website, we've developed these 2 screens right here, and we put some functionality. We want to show you this functionality, and you tell us, are we on point? Is this good? Is this what you actually want to see? So by meeting with the business regularly, you can tweak the requirements, and then they can see some of their value already. Sometimes what may happen is they may actually release like 2 screens out of a whole website, so that instead of waiting a year to get something, they may be able to get something usable in like 2 months. And they're already using it while the team is still working on all of the rest of their website. Let me pause there, and then let me know in the chat if you have questions about that before we keep going.
No, we're good.
Awesome. Okay. So instead of like the requirements, then the design, that step plan, Agile starts off with requirements and analysis first, and then they go into sprint planning. So a sprint can be 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And sprint just means in this block of time, we want to be able to put a calculator on screen 1. So they break down the work into smaller chunks, and whatever they can get through in that 2 or 3 weeks, that's what they get through. So then in the 2 weeks, they can do all the planning, and then they go into coding. And once you go into coding and then release it, then you're back into the maintenance. So basically, instead of just doing those steps and it takes like a month, you do all of these steps like every 2-3 weeks. So then instead of just having your decaf coffee, you can have decaf with a little bit of honey. You can get your latte with raw sugar, or you can get your latte with the vanilla syrup. So now you're able to tailor what type of coffee drink you get. So instead of having coffee like at the gas station, now you're at a coffee shop. You're at Starbucks, you're at Tim Hortons. Hey, I want to pick this, and this. Grab my coffee and I'm out. So there are still some people who are like, well, we don't like Agile because there's too much change. And basically, what companies have to do is they have to listen to those people that hate Agile and they listen to the people that love it. And then they find like a middle ground. So basically, what I end up doing as a consultant in my regular job is that they'll put me on a project. And depending on what company it is, they could be like early in Agile, they could be midway, and I've even been at a company where they decided, yes, we like Agile, but our employees have their own culture and our employees don't like the wording that Agile comes with. So they created a whole different Agile, named it that of the company, and then changed the names of what all the Agile events were, which I found hilarious because basically instead of dealing with the culture shift, they navigated around it, which made it difficult when they got new people to join the company. The new people are like, why are y'all doing this? This doesn't make any sense. Like, because a lot of people that are doing Agile, it's something where we can go to every company and repeat the process because the whole point of Agile is that you focus on the process itself. So then you get to a company that changes the process, all the people they hire are like, I'm not doing this. And what ends up happening is they kind of end up leaving and then you're stuck with like a broken Agile. So that would be like the worst case example. But the average example would be they would have maybe one or two teams that are working on Agile, and then one or two teams that are still doing waterfall. And then they'll have those teams try to work together, which sometimes works. Generally, the Agile team is always going to be quicker. They're always going to deliver more. But depending on what the type of work is, you still need the waterfall process. So an example of keeping the waterfall process would be if you're working with like chemicals or the government, because if you're working with chemicals, you have a timeline. If I have to create this new body wash and I'm working for like a consumer goods company, you need the body wash created in 6 months. You don't necessarily need to keep going back. Hey, you guys like this scent? Hey, do you like this packaging? It's just body wash. It's not going to change. So in instances of that, you would still keep the waterfall, if that makes sense. All right, so now we're going to jump into Agile teams. So pretty much an Agile team is a combination of developers, business analysts, and testers. So the business analysts help write some of the instructions that the devs use in order to start their coding, and the testers pretty much test the developer's code when they're already done. You don't want developers testing their own code because they may miss something. They're the people that created it, right? So we just kind of have everybody focus on what they're good at. And then in the end, we end up with a good product. So the first of the events is daily stand-up. So every morning I meet with my team for 15 minutes and we just briefly talk about the status of anything that we're working on. So we meet every day for our 2-week cycle. Refinement is when we discuss the work in the upcoming sprint. We talk about whatever the thing is. Do we have all the information we need? Do we understand what the ask is? So this is like a 1-hour meeting. It happens once a week. Then we have another meeting called planning, where we look at all the work that went through refinement and we select which work we're going to do in the sprint. So planning only happens every 2 weeks. Then we have 2 different ways that we're going to show the customers what we did. One's called a demo, one is called a review. So a demo would be if we actually finish something that's nice and fancy. Let's say we automated a report. So now the report calculates like every 4 hours, it counts up how many cups of coffee we made or how many body washes got shipped somewhere. And then we actually run that, and then they can see, okay, this is what it looks like. These are the colors. These are the calculations. So a demo is you're actually showing something that your client wants to see. A review would be you're just discussing the completed work. So like if there's a report on the front end that's showing the number of body washes, before we even got to that, we had to have something in the back end counting body washes. So a review is, okay, here's the piece of code. This is the information that went in. This is the calculation that came out. So a review is just reviewing work, but there's no like picture or nothing fancy to see. So a demo can happen once a month, once every 2 months. It just depends on the work, but a review generally happens every single sprint so that the business can see what was done. And then finally, there's a retro. So that's a meeting at the end of the sprint where the team just talks. How did things go? What can we change? Maybe the developers want some more training on something. Maybe the business analyst had a tough time working with someone from the business, trying to pull the requirements out. And then we just kind of talk about it as a group. Next thing that we do is something called PI planning. So PI stands for program increment, which is just a fancy word for quarterly. So I'm just going to call it quarterly planning. So in quarterly planning, you talk about like, okay, so now we're almost to June. So we may have quarterly planning at the end of this month. And we're going to talk about what we're doing July, August, and September. And I know you're like, but I thought Agile was supposed to be quick. So how does this planning work if you plan for a whole quarter at a time? Basically, what ends up happening is you may start with big ideas. So quarterly planning would be, okay, we delivered 2 screens last quarter. We want to deliver 3 more screens next quarter. And these are the topics of the 3 screens. So that would just be the planning. We wouldn't drill down into what's going to be on each screen, what the colors are. That would come in the upcoming months. So it's kind of like overall planning, or even if you were doing like a household budget, you don't know what all your expenses are going to be for the next 3 months, but you do know, hey, summer's coming. So the kids are going to be home a lot more than they were before. So my grocery bill is probably going to go up. As a matter of fact, let me go write out 5 different meals that are good for lunch to make sure the kids don't end up trying to sneak and cook the dinner food. You know what I mean? And they're sticking to their lunch food, which is soup, sandwich, nuggets, or fries. You know what I'm saying? So quarterly planning is kind of like that. And then next up is iteration planning. So now we have our big overall planning for 3 months. Our next planning is like a step down. So what are we doing for the 2 weeks? So basically, this is just showing how a backlog is just work. So this could be 1 screen, 2 screens, add a calculation here, add a logo here, change a logo. You'd pick from that into your 2 week sprint, right? And then every 2 weeks, you have to deliver something. It may not be something you can actually see. It just may be back end code. So when we are doing the planning, we decide which person on the team can do the work, and we'll actually go in and assign that person. And then we make sure we have all the information we need. So like, let's say somebody goes on vacation. If the senior engineer goes on vacation, all I have is my junior engineers. It may take the junior engineer a lot longer to get that work completed. So maybe we would say, hey, how about you go visit another person from another team that's more senior to get your questions answered first before we start on this story. And we'll give you two weeks to complete it, or 2.5 weeks. even though when we first talked about it, we were going to give that senior engineer 1 week. So basically, that just means that we get to discuss the work and have them focus more on what's being delivered. Okay, so this one, I know this looks scary, but I just want to cover the topic. There's something called CICD, and it stands for continuous improvement, continuous delivery. So basically, when the developers are all done with their code, here are the developers over here. It's how the code gets to production. So basically, they have their code. It's called version control. So version control just means when all the code for 2 weeks is done, we lock the code so that no one can accidentally change it. And then we hand it over to another team. And that team just makes sure it goes through its final checks. That's called compiling and packaging. And it gets to operations, and then they'll test the code in another environment. And the reason why you want a different team to do this is you want your developers to just focus on developing and not have to focus on this little part here. So this part here may take up to a week and a half, depending on how large the system is, especially if you're working in a very large company. It'll be a separate team that does the testing to release it to prod, which is fine because basically it's like if you're working at Target is going to have more checks and balances than if you're working at like a much smaller company. So if your company only has like 100, 200, even 500 employees, then the developers themselves will do all of this because it's easy and straightforward. But if the company is larger, you just can't because there's more checks and balances. And then finally, I just wanted to talk a little bit about watergile or combo mambo. So that's basically when a company picks and chooses what parts of Agile to work with and how it suits them. And the idea is that companies do want to go to Agile, but if your company is large, like Target, it may take you 3 years to switch over your teams and reorganize them, because keep in mind, you're moving people that were only on teams of devs or only on teams of testers. You're combining them into one team. And if you have existing employees, there's some employees that are like, you know what, I don't like this. I don't want to learn anything new. I'd rather go back to a waterfall team, or I may leave the company altogether, in which case now you have people that have been there a long time, they're leaving, and they're getting replaced with brand new people from other companies. And those replacement people, they still need time to get up to speed to understand the technology that's happening. So you won't necessarily find companies that are all waterfall or all agile. They generally have some waterfall teams, some agile teams, and some teams that may be a combo of both. And then finally, I just wanted to talk about some of the non-coding roles. So the ones that I recommend for people that are brand new to technology are the tester role and the business analyst role. Because a tester, pretty much, if you take like a class on quality analysis or you do a cert, you pretty much can get like a junior tester job. The same thing with business analysts. Even if you don't have a cert, if you were already doing that business function, so let's say it's a mortgage company and there's someone who answered the phone all the time, they did customer service, or maybe they were an underwriter and they had to go and figure out if people even qualify for these loans. Those people have the business knowledge and the expertise to understand the process. So as a business analyst, you basically are writing the intro instructions for the developer. So you may have been an underwriter, so you know how the mortgages work. So you would say, okay, developer, what the client wants is they want this report. to show how many people are on the phone talking about this underwriting stuff. And then they want to see the report refresh every 4 hours. So because they have that business knowledge, they're able to write those directions and do some of the organizing and then hand that over to the developer. So these are the two roles that I recommend first. What generally happens is once people are doing these two roles for maybe like 2, 3 years, as long as they're with the same company or in the same industry, it's pretty easy for them to jump into these four roles at the bottom. So basically, a product owner and a product manager is someone that's one level up from the business analyst. So they may be in charge of like a whole website or a whole product. The Scrum Master is the person that runs the Agile ceremonies. And I've worked with Scrum Masters who weren't any of these roles before. They weren't even a dev. All they did was go get the Scrum Master cert, and they found a company that was hiring junior Scrum Masters. And that's how they got started. A release train engineer is someone that's been a developer or a tester for like 4 or 5 years, and then they get a cert, and then they're doing some more of the management in Agile. And then finally, there's the Agile coach. That's me. So basically, I come in and take a look at how everyone is operating, how the Scrum Master is doing, and I give the Scrum Master pointers. I may give the team members pointers to help them do the Agile a little bit better. All right. Did you have any questions? Were you interested in one of these roles specifically and you wanted me to cover a little bit about them?
Sorry, I was instructing my son to try to be quiet. Yeah, so I actually have my Scrum Master certification. I got
Woohoo!
it maybe about 2, 3 weeks ago. So I'm
Woohoo!
kind
Okay,
of
got it.
more, yeah, I'm kind of more on the example that you had given just now, where someone got their certification and then they found a company that was hiring junior Scrum Masters. So I think right now I'm kind of in that place of like, how do I just get in, with not really coming from an agile company that doesn't really
Mhm.
implement it. I basically, for the most part, am coming in with no or quote unquote experience. And so kind of more so, how do I just get into the game basically?
Awesome. The first thing I would do is take a look at your LinkedIn profile. So on LinkedIn, you basically have a blank canvas. What some people think LinkedIn is, they're like, oh, all I have to do is cut and paste my resume. You don't need to do that. Instead, LinkedIn is use LinkedIn as an expression of where you want to go, not necessarily where you've been. So, like underneath your name, they have like a tagline. You can put aspiring Scrum Master in your tagline. Um, and then, like what I did for the companies I worked for, I talked about what I learned at that company, why I liked it, and what I'm looking for in the next company, so that my LinkedIn profile is more about my personality and what I want to do, and not necessarily what I've done in the past. But on your resume, you know how there's like a little paragraph at the top where it talks about what you're looking for. You say, I recently got my Scrum Master certification from such and such. I really enjoy working with Agile teams and helping them adopt Agile processes. I'm looking for my very first role so I can make an impact at my next company. Boom, right on the top of your resume. And then use LinkedIn and apply for every single Scrum Master role you see. Even if it says, okay, 50 people have already applied, 100 people have already applied. Apply anyway, because the way some of the software works at these companies is they may grab all of these resumes and just dump them and save them. You know what I mean? So even if you don't necessarily get a call back, they may still have your resume on file. The other thing I would do is go to some of the tech companies directly, go to the careers page and look for all the Scrum Master roles and apply directly there as well. I would use LinkedIn and applying directly.
Okay, awesome. I truly appreciate that, especially about the LinkedIn, because both me and my husband were in the process of doing this career change. So he also got his certification. And we
Yay!
actually did pay for like a professional service for our resumes and LinkedIn and stuff like that and
Mhm.
cover letter. And it's so funny that you say that, because for the most part in the LinkedIn, it's not word for word, but basically what's on the resume. So you're saying
Right.
it doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't have to be that way. Only because when you apply, they have your resume. So you don't have to put all the exact same bullets on your LinkedIn. They're going to
Right.
your LinkedIn to find out if you have anything extra. LinkedIn also has a section called portfolio. I've seen some people do like a little PI planning as a portfolio. I don't necessarily think that recruiters are looking for it, but I have seen it done. Pretty much what I think LinkedIn should be is it's just another blank space for you to tell that recruiter why they should pick you over someone else.
Gotcha. Cool. Thank you. And just apart from that, can you can you actually explain, because during the certification exam, I kind of had a hard time understanding stories and product
Yeah.
backlog increments. Can you go a little bit into that?
Yes, I can. I don't have any visuals, but I'll try to explain it thinking from the point of view of someone who hasn't been on a Scrum team. So let's say let's say you have to plan out your kids' lunches for 4 weeks and you want to go to, say, Costco to load up on some stuff. I had 3 kids, and 3 kids means I needed 15 lunches. I have one kid who has a classroom that doesn't, where you can't bring peanut butter. And then I have another kid that didn't like lunch meat, right? But when I sat down to figure out what the heck am I buying from Costco, I have to keep that in mind. So that means I have a requirement where 5 of the lunches have to be no peanut butter, 5 of the lunches have to be no lunch meat, right? And then my daughter, she really likes sweets, but she only wants those brownies that have the little color M&Ms on them, right? So my backlog is I have a list of 1 through 15. I'm writing out what they're actually getting. So I'm actually writing out not peanut butter and jelly, almond butter, almond butter and jelly. And then I needed the kid that had it was tortilla chips and some salsa in like a plastic container. And then I had another kid that just wanted like a tortilla roll up. So I have these 15 lunches that are ordered, right? And then that's just my main lunch. And then I have 15 snacks. So I have a list of 30 things that I need to buy. So all of those 30 things are my backlog. I'm going to keep a backlog going of everything I need to buy every single month because remember, I got to go to different stores. I got to go to Walmart. I got to go to Costco. I got to go to the regular grocery store. But now it's time for me to go shopping. I only have $50. So I'm like, well, shit, I can't buy 15 lunches with $50. I'm only going to buy 5 lunches. So let's say I'm only going to buy lunches for 1 week at a time. So I'm pulling 5 lunches from my backlog of 30 things that I need to buy. So now that I'm only working with the 5 lunches, I'm only going to deliver those 5 lunches in 1 week's time. So with the lunches, I'm going to write out the name. So kid number 1 is going to get a fruit roll up, an apple, a juice, and something else. So the story for the engineer is what that particular kid is getting for lunch, right? So then I put that lunch together, I hand it to the kid, you go off and you do that. So the story itself is only what that kid gets for lunch. And then I'm tracking what happens to that story in a 2-week time frame. And at the end of the 2 weeks, that story needs to be done. You ate all your lunch. You don't have any more food left over. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for putting it in that example because that really does make sense. Cool.
Right.
And then just one final question. There was a slide that you had put on, I think it was your positions that you've had, how long they were there, and the other certifications that you have had.
Oh, yeah.
So with me doing this career change and just having my certified Scrum Master, what else would you suggest? What would be a next either certification or class that I could take? Because I'm noticing that a lot of jobs are requiring experience with like Jira or things like that, other
Yep.
softwares, which I don't have. Yep, which I don't have that experience. So, what would be the next steps that you would suggest?
So the top two, um, they're basically tools. So Jira is Jira, and then there's something called ADO. Let me write them in the chat so you can write them down. So Jira and ADO, Azure DevOps. So remember how I was telling you how we had to write down our list of 30, and then I had to write down, okay, what exact lunch is that one kid going to get? Basically, to organize that whole thing and organize your backlog, you're going to use one of these two tools, Jira and ADO or Azure DevOps. Right now, today, like this afternoon, I need you to go to YouTube and just search up Introduction to Jira, Introduction to ADO, Azure DevOps. I need you to start writing YouTube videos. And then actually go to these websites. I know for ADO specifically, you can create a login where they'll give you ADO and you can play around with it. So basically, this is an example where you have to teach yourself some things. There may be companies that have classes like this. I haven't seen like a certification in using these tools, but I would just go to YouTube, keep watching the videos, especially the ADO, and start practicing with it. And then under skills on your resume, you can say basic level understanding of ADO. And honestly, after you watch, I would say at least 4 YouTube videos and then go practice this ADO maybe 4 times a week for 2 weeks, I will go ahead and put basic understanding of ADO. The other thing that's going to happen is when you're interviewing for these Scrum Master positions, they're going to ask you what tools you've used in the past. And you just say, I have a basic understanding of ADO, or I have a basic understanding of Jira. And with that Scrum Master job specifically, you can do 2 things. You can go to a company and hire direct, where let's say it's Target, and Target is like, Jessica, we want you to be a Scrum Master for this team. We want you to be a full-time hire. We'll give you all these benefits, and you're just going to work for us. Or you do something called contract, and there's a lot of contract jobs that are Scrum Master jobs. When you're on LinkedIn, they'll kind of tell you if it's contract or direct hire in the description. If you look for contract, they'll say, all right, Jessica, we want you to work for our consulting company. We're going to contract you out, and we're not going to give you any benefits, which means if you miss a day of work, you don't get paid, which is fine, because if your husband already has all the medical, dental, you can work this contract job. And as a contractor, you can say, okay, I can do this contract, but I'm only available to work for you 4 hours a day from 8 p.m. Eastern to 12 noon, which is fine because as a Scrum Master, the only thing you're doing is running these Agile events. You don't have to be the business analyst and go find information. You don't have to be the developer and code. You don't have to be the tester. So some companies are like, ooh, we can save some money by not hiring her full time and hiring her part time, which means you can get two contracts. So one company you're contracted 8 to 12, another company you're contracted 1 to 5, and you're basically working two jobs at the same time.
Thank you so much. Honestly, yeah, we've actually talked about that. He's more kind of like the entrepreneurial, so he's more inclined to get a contract, and I'm the one currently right now who has benefits. So we have talked about that, um but no, but thank you for explaining that. That really puts it into perspective. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And then with you guys both doing it at the same time, you can actually basically use each other to bounce ideas back and forth. One person work directly with the company, another person can do the contract jobs. I could see this working. And then the way it works in terms of timing. So when I'm doing Scrum Master jobs, a lot of the employees I'm working with, they're overseas. They're not even in the United States. And for those jobs, those are the ones where they're like, we don't need you to come into the office because your whole team is in India, Poland, the Philippines. So you just stay at home. So basically from, let's say, like 7 a.m. Eastern to noon, I have meetings. And in the afternoon, I'm just free. Like I don't have to be in a meeting. I don't have work to do. I'm reading Agile books, or I'm watching some videos on YouTube, or I'm driving my kids around. So it can be very flexible.
Yeah, we actually, that's kind of he was the one that was really introduced to, because we have a friend who has a Scrum Master, and like you said, we kind of both wanted to do to together, so to like bounce ideas off and stuff like that. So that's what we've been doing. So kind of just looking at classes like this, like what you're holding right now, to just get a little bit more in depth to it and to just be prepared when it comes time to interviewing and stuff.
Perfect. There are also interviewing tips. So YouTube is like a gold mine. YouTube also has interviewing tips specifically for Scrum Masters. I've even seen some where they just go over the interview questions and how to answer the questions, which is awesome.
Right.
Let me tell you a little bit more about how to work with me. I do something called a 20-minute discovery call where I find out what it is you're doing and where you're going. And basically, what I just told you is what happens in my discovery call. I also have group coaching. I'm working on an Agile Basics workbook and a user story writing webinar. And then I'm still teaching these meetup classes. So my meetup classes are kind of like the most basic information I have. User story writing is more high level, like if you are going to be a BA, but you may be interested in user story writing just to get a visual for what the backlog is. So I do have my email address. Well, here's my website. If you go to my website, my email address is on my website. It'll also be on the next slide too. Send me an email and maybe we can connect so that I can actually show you what my backlog looks like to help you really understand what a backlog is and what story writing is. So that
Okay.
would be no fee. Just send me an email and we can screen share. So screenshot this one. This is my email address and then my website. And then for this class, I'm just asking for a $5 donation, but make sure to send me an email so we can set up some time so that I can walk you through what that backlog looks like, which is really going to help you in your interviews because a lot of the interview questions are more of they want to put scenarios, kind of like what you did in your certification, but they want you to talk through how you would handle it. So, like, they may say something like, what are you going to do if your team keeps rolling over stories and they're not getting their work finished in 2 weeks? Basically, you would talk to the team and say, if you guys keep rolling over the stories, then we probably need to make the stories smaller because clearly you can't do it in 2 weeks. You know what I'm saying? Um, so we probably can talk through some of those questions while I show you what a backlog looks like.
Awesome. Truly appreciate it. And yes, I will be sending you an email today.
Perfect. I've got time for a few more questions before I go grab tea for my next class. Is there anything else you'd like me to cover?
Um, no, I don't think so. No, you've been very informative. So, no, I don't have anything right now.
Perfect. It was nice to meet you today. I hope that you learned something. And again, keep in contact. I'd love to help.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
You too. Bye.
Bye bye.